Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Let me just. Ooh, there we go. Hello, hello. My name is Opulence Abundance. Let me get this right. Okay. My name is Opulence Abundance. I'm a speaker, I'm a conflict navigator, I'm a facilitator, and I'm so excited to go live with you to talk about love and the nervous system. If you are joining me today from the future, from the present, please let me know. Just drop a little emoji. But yeah, super excited to talk today. So I've been going live twice a week for the past month or so as I have been in an EMDR training. And if you don't know what EMDR is, it's eye movement reprocessing and desensitization therapy. So it's a great way to use our eyes and these different techniques to release trauma and to help our brain metabolize trauma and stuck emotions like fear and anxiety that might happen when we go through a single incident traumatic event. So if you were in a car crash, um, if you endured something violent, that single event, EMDR can be a very powerful tool. So I've been going live while I'm in this training, and next week will be my last two lives. So thank you all for joining me for this series. I've really enjoyed it, and I have a pretty big announcement that I'm going to share on Monday. So keep your eyes peeled. I'm at Opulence Abundance across all platforms: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. If you aren't subscribed to my YouTube, please subscribe to my YouTube. And you can find all the past lives on YouTube. But let's get into it today. So I always like to start with a little poem. And today I want to read Solstice Depth Guidance from Mild Deep Diving Whales by Alexis Pauline Gumbs. I love Alexis. So here is the poem. A Guide for Diving Deeper from Cachalot, aka Pfister Mactocephalus, aka the sperm whale, who can dive more than a mile deep, translated by Alexis Pauline Gumbs. 1. Breathe. We sperm whales can replace 90% of the air in our lungs with one breath. We can blow our breath 17 feet high. However deep you are breathing, breathe more, breathe deeper. 2. Take responsibility for your forehead. We, for example, have a head full of wax. We can solidify like a weight to go deeper. We can melt it to become lighter than water and float. What is going on in your head? Be intentional with it. 3. Hush. We stretch out our bodies 60 feet long at the surface and then arch our backs face down. Our tails come with us, barely creating a ripple. We are saving our energy for depth. This is not the time to splash. 4. Be flexible. Deep in the ocean, there is pressure, a lot of pressure. It will press on your chest and your lungs will collapse. You call it heartbreak. It is not. It is how what made you embraces you, reshapes you, welcomes you back. Let it happen. 5. Be specific with your actions. When your lungs collapse, you will need the oxygen in your blood. It is deep in your muscles. It was put there by practice. Let your practice facilitate depth. It will be there when you need it. 6. Listen. We listen underneath our throats, not with our ears. We listen across the planet. We can hear each other click from the opposite sides of the globe. Though we may seem alone, we never are. 7. Come back. You will know when it has been enough time in the deep. It can vary. Attune to your need, account for your nourishment. direct your thoughts, melt them down, make them light, and return. And that was a poem by Alexis Pauline Gumbs. This poem is called Solstice Depth for Mile Deep Diving Whales. Thank you so much for joining me for the poem. So, again, my name is Opulence. Today we're talking about love and the nervous system. And before we dive in, we're just going to do a little something physical to get our bodies in the room. And we are just going to make our hands into claws, put them to our forehead, and just gently pull apart. And when you get to kind of the sides of your face, just flick the energy downward. Let's just do it again. Just imagine you're clearing your mind. And if you don't mind messing up your hair, you can actually do this going from the front of your scalp to the back. Just bring your hands together, pushing down gently. You don't need too much force. Pulling apart, flicking the energy all the way to the back of your head. And this is a great activity for those of us who do a lot of cognitive work, computer work. And if you're watching with me, if you're doing this movement with me, let me know, drop an emoji. It's hard for me to see who's online, so I love to know if you're with me in the present. Let's finish off that movement just by rubbing our hands together. And we're just going to bring this warmth to our face, up to our eyes, and pull apart. I'll just do this movement 7 times. This is called like a Qigong facial. Just bringing the energy, this divine energy to our face, circulating. 6, once more, 7. Great job, everyone. Okay, so now that we've done our little grounding poem, a little movement, self-massage, let's get into our topic. So when we talk about love and the nervous system, honestly, it's like peanut butter and jelly. And I was inspired to talk about this because of a conversation I had yesterday with a dear friend. And they reminded me that once upon a time we had a conversation where I basically told them that when you are in long-term safe relationship with someone. So let's break that down, right? Because we can be in long-term relationship with people and it's not safe, right? There's some aspect of it that activates us or feels coercive. I think a safe relationship is a relationship where 80% of the time we are regulated. There might be activations, but we can return to a safe, trustworthy baseline. There are many people who, when we enter, for me at least, when I enter their presence, I immediately dissociate, right? I drop out of my window of safety into dissociation. And I live there the whole time we're together. And then when I leave them, I like freak out, right? And I have to return to my baseline on my own. So that is not what I would call a safe relationship. And it doesn't mean it's less valuable. It just means it's less safe. So when we are in a long-term safe relationship, there is a quality of yes that can come forward. There is a quality of, there is a yes that we can feel that we truly mean. When we say yes to that person that we've known for a year, 5+ years, we feel safe with them. There is a level of consent that can emerge in that relationship that is rare and special. And my friend was reflecting back to me that when I was talking to them about that like there are yeses we can give that are like deep, true yeses that emerge over time, because sometimes the first year, the first 6 months in the relationship, like that yes might not be a true yes. And because I think this is because in relationships, there are so many coercive factors that like that is the nature of relationships. And let me unpack what I mean by that. Our nervous system, so the part of our brain and body that is assessing all the time whether we are safe, and that is ready to activate, And that part of us is wired to prioritize belonging. So when we talk about an emotion like shame, that emotion has a lot of control over people, right? That emotion will drive people to lie, to steal, to keep things secret, to do all sorts of things. And shame is an emotion that the body receives as physically painful. When we feel shame, we often, the way it feels, the way it presents to me, I might just feel an intensity in my chest and body. And it's actually difficult for me to trace what the physical sensations of shame are because that emotion is so painful that if I'm feeling it, I'm likely dissociating. Shame is ultimately an emotion that emerges when we are splitting from the group. Um, Shame is an emotion that is an indicator that we are in some way doing something that may threaten belonging. I think shame is such an interesting emotion and an emotion I've gone on a journey with because early in my life, I felt shame constantly. It was so painful. And when I reflect back, it makes sense because I'm an intersex trans person, right? And so there is something going on there where I was dealing with my identity being in conflict with my source of belonging, and it was creating a painful emotional experience for me. As I have had more time and more presence to say, like, actually, it's okay, and this isn't threatening my belonging, now I see shame as an emotion that is a moral indicator that if it comes up, it's a chance for reflection. So for just reflecting on my journey, I think it's interesting where it's like shame can be a toxic emotion, especially if the communities we're belonging in are very rigid. Then that shame emotion can come up very readily, even in situations in a way that harms us, you know? But over time, if we are able to have a baseline and to feel safe and grounded in our everyday, and shame is a more rare emotion, it's not necessarily threatening. But I bring that up all to say that our nervous system works with our body, like our nerves. Our nervous system is both a part of our mind and it's a part of our body, right? And when we feel these emotions, which we might perceive as cerebral, it can be extremely overwhelming. And that's what brings us to relationships because relationships bring out a tremendous amount of feeling. Relationships can make us feel so activated. They can really light us up. They can drive us to anger, to frustration, to sadness. You know, when I work with people, and a core of my work is just knowing how it can feel to have that like unresolved feeling. That feeling that keeps you up at night, like the emotions are so strong, you can't stop. The intensity can be so present. I'm always like, wow, I know how it feels to be overwhelmed and over just like powerless almost to emotions. And in that state, what can we do to find relief? And it can be hard because that state is so, so inconsolable. And I think relationships drive people to that state more than anything. And so, so much of my work with people is meeting with them when they might be in a state like that and really trying to bring in, I think that one, being around someone else can really do a lot, even if it's virtual, even if it's just watching a live like this. When we're in an inconsolable state, sometimes someone else's nervous system can kind of help bring us down. And then I'm a big believer in somatic tools, as we've talked about, as a way to release energy and ultimately emotional expression. And I encourage people to not get so caught up in the thoughts, what they're thinking when they're in these states, and more just allow the emotional expression to flow through in a safe way. So for anger, it can look like ripping up paper, screaming into a pillow, throwing pillows. but you never want to throw glass, right? And it can look like even going to a rage room, going on a walk where you stomp a lot, angry dancing. Like these are safe forms of expression. And we have to set ourselves up to succeed. So if anger is something that is like what we're receiving all the time, maybe setting up like some pillows and a place to throw them at home, maybe going to Goodwill and getting some plates that you can safely break. There are all these ways that we can create expressive, cathartic space for ourselves. One of my favorite cathartic activities is screaming, singing in the car, right? So if we can channel our emotions, we can be in more control over them. And I think that's why I'm such an advocate for self reflection and checking in with our emotions constantly. One of my favorite creators, I think she's called the Feelings Movement. She talks about how like feelings are like pooping. And when we know that we need to poop, we go to the bathroom. We don't ignore the feeling, try and make it go away by smoking a cigarette. We know what we have to do. We have to process and release it, right? We just have to let it go. And emotions are kind of the same way, where like when we feel an emotion, we can't just like ignore it and hope it goes away. Like we have to let it go. We have to process our feelings. And if you don't, if you keep avoiding, you get really backed up. And being emotionally backed up is the same as being physically backed up. It's no fun, guys. And what can happen is that things can come out when we least expect it, especially if we're backed up, which is why we have to make time, make intention, make energy to release our emotions independently, regularly. In relationships, it is so easy for other people to be where we target our anger. We say, that person said this, and that's why I feel this way. And this feeling is their fault, and they need to take accountability for this feeling. And when people are in that space, we just got to take a deep breath, pull it back, and understand that while this feeling can be uncomfortable, we can be angry about feeling angry. Ultimately, our emotions are our responsibility and they're not another person's fault. We can identify that another person's actions, another person's presence, or even their values, how they move through the world, those things may activate us, they may trigger us, they may just be things we don't agree with and don't want to be around. None of those are moral judgments. We're not saying that this person is a bad person. We're not saying that they don't deserve to live. We're just saying it is not healthy for where we are in life to be near them. And I think that's a very safe, sane thing to feel. Um, it is okay to have boundaries with other people, especially if it's in service of preventing harm. Um, but sometimes it sometimes it can be difficult to understand those things. So just taking a breath here, validating that we can have boundaries. Now, what I want to name is that when we get into intimate relationships, it's not as easy as just setting up a boundary or being like, you trigger me, I have to go away from you. Because the nature of intimate relationships is that the other person will trigger us. And what I find helpful for moving through these activations to allow us to experience intimacy, because I think that's what a lot of us want. We want to be in intimate relationships, but we struggle because intimate relationships are inherently activating. And it can be confusing because it's like, well, it was all going great. And then it got so activating, both of us walked away, and this pattern sucks. Like all my relationships might be ending this way. And when we have a pattern, it's kind of a gift because we can look back and we can just observe what happened and just spend time reflecting and thinking, like, what was that activation? Why did these things happen? And I think what's so helpful when we do that type of reflective work is just remembering that multiple things are true, right? So remembering that just remembering that someone could have genuinely crossed our boundaries, and the right decision was to end the relationship. And also, that relationship is the repeat of a pattern. Um, and what I try and get at here is, because I think I'm naming this because in my own relationship, sometimes I'm like, wait, which was it? If it's just me and it's my pattern, then was the relationship actually viable? And what I would encourage you to understand is like, likely no, it's over now. So it doesn't really matter, right? And multiple things can be true. So we can be in relationship and we can, sorry, I just need to do some, I don't know if I can. Okay. My computer is dying. That's what I'm moving through. But anyways, back to relationships. So what we can do, you know what? I'm just going to pause and grab my computer charger because it's on my mind. So stay with me. I'll be right back. Okay, thanks for your patience, guys. I never work over here, so exciting. Anyways, okay, so what I was trying to say though is that oftentimes when we identify a pattern and we're reflecting on relationships that didn't work out, we might be looking at the pattern in terms of like when the conflict emerged that broke the relationship. But sometimes the pattern extends to like, why did I choose this person? And the more reflective work we do, the more we can kind of be like, oh, actually, this conflict was always going to happen. And when I think about it, there were signs that this rupture was going to happen from the start of the relationship. So then the question becomes like, why did we choose this, and why do we keep choosing this? So just wanted to name all of those pieces. Now I want to get into how to like tangibly, realistically, and helpfully move through conflict when you are in a relationship, and you don't want it to go the way it's gone. The first thing I want to advocate for is if there is a danger of harm, of the conflict escalating, take space. Harm is real. We never want to cause violence. There are things we can say to people that we can't take back. People talk about how conflict is generative. I would say conflict can be generative, it can be destructive. And sometimes people say or do things to each other that it cannot be easily forgiven, if forgiven at all. And that's just the truth of it. So I encourage us, especially with people who are important to us, to break the habit if we have it and to not get into the habit of saying things we don't mean or being cruel, because it is easy to cross a line and you can't take it back. So it is like toothpaste. Like once you squeeze toothpaste from the tube, it can't go back in the tube. I have seen couples and individuals heal from extraordinary circumstances. But what I want people to understand is that healing is not going back in time. It is moving forward in a new dynamic. So if you enjoy a dynamic you have with someone, protect it. And by that I mean be mindful of your words and actions and be accountable to them. When you enter a conflict and you just feel angry or frustrated with someone, if you need to, take space. If you are obsessing, you're going to have a lot of thoughts. You're going to want to justify the thoughts. And I encourage you just to be like, yes, these are my thoughts. I can write them down. But ultimately, healing this conflict is not going to be about communicating these thoughts. These thoughts are just like your body trying to make sense of the emotions. So kind of practice some distance from the thoughts, or feeling like everything needs to be heard. And I think this is where it starts to get tricky, because you want to discern and try and understand what's the core of this. Why do I feel this way? Most often it's like because there's a boundary cross. It might be very often it's that you don't feel seen, you feel judged, you feel unheard. Those are like most often like you desire validation, you feel hurt, you feel treated without care. But I think really not being seen, feeling judged, those are the things that can really make our minds race. So once you know that core thought where it's like, oh, this is the thing. And even if you can't get there, even if you're just like, I'm feeling super activated, I don't understand why. I think that's an okay way to enter like conversation with a person. Um, I think what I'm trying to the big picture of what I'm trying to say is like, don't get snagged on every little thing. No, I find that the most successful intervention pattern is to have a conversation and then to have a follow-up conversation soon after. For me, what I noticed is in that initial conversation where I might be like, I feel crazy. I don't know why. Excuse me for that ableist term. I feel overwhelmed. I'm having obsessive thoughts. Obviously, I something happened between us that really upset me. I'm still trying to understand why I'm upset. That can be a great way to go into a conversation. And then you can also share, like, I'm having a lot of defensiveness around, and I'm saying defensiveness because if you're like, if you feel like you're a lawyer in a courtroom or you're building a case against the other person, you're being defensive, right? There is something going on there. So being able to enter a conversation and be like, I'm feeling defensive, particularly around this incident or this thing. Ideally, you and the other person can talk through it. And they might say things that further activate you. And I think a great thing to have in place for these talks is a pause, like a timeout. So if someone says something and they're like mid sentence, you can just be like, timeout. I need a pause. That actually really upset me. So often I definitely see people do the thing where someone says something, it totally like lights up, activates the other person. The person talking doesn't catch it and they just keep talking and it just digs the activation in deeper. In a lot of situations, we may be in a dynamic with someone where like no matter what they say, it just activates us. And if the dynamic has like escalated to that level, I would say that that is an indicator to take significant space, at least 2 weeks, but maybe up to a year. Okay, so I've kind of shared like the aspects. I didn't really expect this live to go in this direction, but I think this is highly utilitarian and extremely helpful for people on how to approach and understand um yeah, how to approach and understand these different pieces of like how can we have these conversations with people we love when our nervous systems are so activated. I hope this live was helpful. I'm trying to think if there's any other pieces. I think the big thing is practice detachment to thoughts. Take space if you're worried about violence or causing harm. um the other big thing I would say is practice listening with each other. So often someone says something, we respond, but I think using the term or phrase, can you reflect that back to me? Can I reflect that back to you? So you're not defending yourself. You're just saying, I hear you saying that when you shared this to me, I laughed and you felt hurt. People often, I find that the role of a facilitator is useful in just supporting people and slowing down, hearing each other. Yeah. So if you do have a hard conversation that needs mediation, that's something I do. I would be more than happy to do that always for any of you. But yeah, those are the big themes. Hey, Nicole, sorry you're coming in right as I'm ending. But those are the big themes of this conversation. Practice listening with each other. Be kind together. Thank you all for coming today. Again, big announcement coming Monday. Hope you can join me. And again, if you join late, my name is Opulence and I'm a conflict navigator and speaker. and I've really enjoyed this series. And next week, I'll be going live again on Monday and Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. I hope you can join me. Okay, bye, everyone. Have a beautiful Friday.